It was an unusually hot afternoon when Tariq finished his last delivery for the day and decided to take a different route home, hoping to avoid the heavy traffic that often clogged the roads. As he made his way through a busy street in one of the wealthier parts of the city, he noticed something that made him stop in his tracks. Lying on the side of the road just outside a sleek high-rise building was a woman, her body twisted at an unnatural angle, blood pooling around her head. Tariq's heart skipped a beat. He quickly slowed down and pulled over to assess the situation. Her clothes were expensive, a sharp contrast to her disheveled state. She looked unconscious, her face pale, and the faint rise and fall of her chest indicated she was still alive, but just barely. Without a second thought, Tariq leaped off his bike and rushed to her side. His first instinct was to help, and although he didn't know who this woman was or how she had ended up in such a state, he knew he couldn't just leave her there. He checked her pulse, weak but still present. Her forehead was badly bruised, and there was blood seeping from a head injury. He pulled out his phone and dialed emergency services, trying to remain calm as he gave them her location. He spoke softly to her, trying to keep her awake, though he had no idea if she could hear him. "Please stay with me," he said gently. "Help is coming." The woman's eyelids fluttered open briefly, and her lips parted to speak, but no words came out. She tried to move, but her body was too weak. Tariq's heart raced. He wasn't sure if he could save her, but he couldn't just let her die. When the ambulance arrived, they rushed her away to the hospital, and Tariq was left standing there, staring after them, the weight of what he had just done settling over him. He had saved a life today, but who was she? And why was she alone on the side of the road? Little did Tariq know the woman he had just saved was Amara Bello, the CEO of one of the largest tech companies in Nigeria, and the chain of events that would follow would change both their lives in ways they couldn't have imagined. Days passed after the incident, but Tariq couldn't stop thinking about the woman he had helped on the roadside. His mind replayed the moment over and over, her pale face, the blood, and the fragile, desperate look in her eyes. He had saved her life, but he didn't know who she was. To him, she was just another stranger in a world that felt so distant and foreign. Life quickly returned to its usual grind. Tariq continued working as a delivery boy, navigating the unforgiving traffic of Lagos, delivering food to the city's wealthiest citizens. Yet, in the back of his mind, he couldn't shake the memory of that afternoon. Who was she? How had she ended up in that state? Then, one morning, Tariq's phone rang. He was in the middle of a delivery when the unfamiliar number flashed on his screen. Hesitant at first, he answered the call, expecting it to be another customer. But what he heard on the other end froze him in his tracks. "This is Bello Tech Solutions, the office of Amara Bello, CEO. Ms. Bello would like to meet with you." Tariq's heart skipped a beat. Amara Bello. The name felt like it belonged to another world, one of power, wealth, and prestige. He had heard whispers about her in the news. The brilliant CEO behind one of the largest tech companies in Nigeria, a woman with influence and wealth beyond his imagination. But why would she want to meet him? A simple delivery boy like him had no reason to cross paths with someone like her. "Why does she want to meet me?" Tariq asked, his voice shaky. "She would like to thank you for saving her life," the voice on the other end responded. Tariq's mind raced. He had saved her life? But why was she looking for him now? Was she offering him some form of compensation? Maybe money for his trouble? He didn't know what to think. After a moment of hesitation, Tariq agreed to the meeting. He was nervous, unsure of what to expect. But the thought of meeting Amara Bello, someone so far removed from his own world, was both overwhelming and intriguing. The meeting was scheduled for the following day, and Tariq arrived at the sleek Bello Tech headquarters in the heart of Lagos. The building's imposing glass facade reflected the city's skyline, a symbol of the wealth and power that Amara had built from the ground up. As Tariq stepped into the lobby, he felt out of place. The polished floors, the high-end decor, it was all so foreign to him. He stood there, nervously shifting from foot to foot until a receptionist led him to an elevator that took him to the top floor. When the doors opened, Tariq stepped into an office that seemed to embody everything he had never known: luxury, sophistication, and power. And sitting behind a large desk was Amara Bello herself. She was even more striking in person, her sharp features softened by a calm, poised demeanor. She smiled as she stood up to greet him. "Tariq," she said, her voice calm and warm, "thank you for coming." Tariq stood frozen for a moment, his mind racing. He had no idea what to say. Amara motioned for him to sit. "I wanted to thank you in person. You saved my life, and I believe it's time I returned the favor." The next few weeks were a whirlwind for Tariq. After that fateful meeting at Bellotech Solutions, he found himself caught in a world he never could have imagined. Amara Bello, the powerful CEO, had not only thanked him for saving her life, but she had also given him a chance, an opportunity to work for her company, a job that would drastically change his life. At first, Tariq was hesitant. He had no formal education or background in business. He was just a delivery boy, a man who had never dreamed of stepping into the high-rise offices that towered over Lagos. But Amara insisted. "You have something most people don't, heart, and that's worth more than any degree," she had said. Tariq's first role at Bellotech was a humble one. He started in a logistics position, helping to manage deliveries and inventory for the company. The work was grueling, but he was eager to prove himself. He spent long hours learning, studying how the company operated, asking questions, and observing the brilliant minds around him. He absorbed everything he could, determined to succeed. But the moment he set foot in the company, he felt the weight of being an outsider. His colleagues, many of whom had top-tier educations and high-powered jobs, looked at him with suspicion. To them, Tariq wasn't just an employee. He was a symbol of something they couldn't quite understand. How had this man, with no corporate background, managed to waltz into their world? It didn't take long for the whispers to start. Behind closed doors, some of the senior staff started questioning Amara's judgment. "Why him?" they asked. "He's just a delivery boy. What does he know about business?" Tariq couldn't ignore the tension. He could feel the stares, the subtle mockery from his colleagues as he made his way around the office, delivering papers or running errands. They doubted his ability to fit in, to succeed in this polished corporate environment. But the worst of it came from Kemi, a sharp-tongued executive who had been at Bellotech for years. She openly questioned Tariq's place in the company, undermining him whenever she could. One day, after a particularly grueling presentation in a board meeting, Kemi confronted him in the break room. "You really think you belong here, don't you?" she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "You're just a charity case to Amara. Don't forget where you came from." Tariq's blood boiled, but he knew better than to lash out. He simply nodded, knowing he had to hold his ground. But deep down, the comment stung. Was Kemi right? Was he really just a charity case? Was his success all just a fluke? The tension between him and his colleagues grew as Amara's expectations for Tariq only seemed to increase. She believed in him, pushing him harder than anyone else in the company, assigning him more responsibilities. She trusted him with important projects, but with each new task, the pressure mounted. Tariq wasn't just fighting to succeed, he was fighting to prove to everyone, including himself, that he belonged here. But as his responsibilities grew, so did the resistance. Every step forward felt like 2 steps back. Tariq's self-doubt began to creep in. Was he truly cut out for this world of billionaires and business moguls, or was he just an imposter waiting to be exposed? The days felt longer and more exhausting with each passing week. Tariq's responsibilities at Bellotech Solutions had grown significantly, and with them, the pressure. What started as a simple logistical role had expanded into project management, strategic planning, and overseeing key company initiatives. Amara believed in him, often praising his dedication, but as the stakes grew higher, so did the internal conflict that gnawed at him. It was a Friday afternoon when the emotional weight of everything came crashing down. Tariq had just completed a major presentation for one of the company's high-profile clients, but the outcome wasn't what he had hoped for. The client had pushed back on the proposal, demanding extensive revisions and threatening to pull out of the deal. Tariq's heart raced as he sat in the conference room, surrounded by the executives who had looked down on him since day one. They were all waiting for his next move, but Tariq felt paralyzed by fear. "That was a disaster," Kemi whispered to her colleague as they walked past him. "This is what happens when you put someone unqualified in charge." Tariq clenched his fists, but he kept his gaze fixed on the table. Every fiber of his being wanted to respond, to stand up and defend himself, but he knew better than to show weakness. The room felt suffocating. The whispers, the judgment, it was all too much. When the meeting ended, Amara called Tariq into her office. He knew what was coming. Another scolding. Another reminder that he was still the new guy in a world of polished professionals. But when he walked in, he found Amara sitting behind her desk, her expression unreadable. "You've been working hard," she said, her voice soft, "but I can see it. You're struggling." Tariq tried to mask his frustration, but the cracks were starting to show. "I failed today. The presentation didn't go well. I don't know if I'm cut out for this. Maybe I don't belong here." Amara's eyes softened. She stood up and walked around her desk, her heels clicking on the marble floor as she approached him. "Tariq, you've come a long way. You've accomplished things no one here thought possible. I've seen the way you've fought to prove yourself, and I admire that." "I'm trying," Tariq replied, his voice barely a whisper, "but I feel like I'm failing. I'm constantly behind, constantly trying to keep up. The pressure is too much." Amara paused, then placed a hand on his shoulder. "Pressure is part of the game, but so is failure. It's what shapes you. It's what makes you better. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to keep fighting, to trust in yourself. You're here for a reason, Tariq. Don't forget that." Tariq's chest tightened as he looked at her. The weight of her words hit him harder than he expected. He had spent so much time doubting himself, so much time trying to prove his worth to everyone around him. But maybe, just maybe, it was time he started believing in himself. Amara had given him a chance. She had seen something in him. For the first time, Tariq allowed himself to feel the possibility of success, the possibility of truly belonging in this world. It wasn't going to be easy. It was going to take more work, more sacrifice, and more battles against his own self-doubt. But Amara's faith in him was the spark he needed to ignite the fire within himself. As he left her office, Tariq's heart felt lighter, but the tension in his chest remained. The journey ahead would be hard, but he was ready to face it head-on, determined to prove not just to the world, but to himself that he had earned his place. The following weeks seemed to push Tariq to his limits. Despite his determination and Amara's continued support, the cracks in his confidence began to widen. The pressure from his colleagues at Bellotech, especially Kemi, had reached a boiling point. She had grown more aggressive in her attempts to undermine him, her barbs and passive-aggressive remarks cutting deeper each day. She was constantly reminding him of his humble origins, questioning his qualifications, and challenging his every decision. Tariq, for all his hard work and resolve, began to feel like an imposter in a world that seemed determined to prove he didn't belong. Then came the breaking point. It was a Wednesday afternoon when the disaster struck. Tariq had been working tirelessly on an important presentation for a potential investor, Redstone Capital, a firm that could elevate Bellotech to new heights. This deal was crucial, not only for the company's future, but for Tariq's personal growth. Amara had trusted him with it, and the weight of her trust had kept him focused. But as the hours passed and the deadline loomed closer, things began to unravel. The investor's requirements had changed at the last minute, and Tariq struggled to adjust the proposal in time. His anxiety built with every passing second, his hands shaking as he tried to piece everything together. By the time the presentation was ready, it was too late. Tariq felt rushed and unprepared, the cracks in his preparation becoming painfully obvious as he stepped into the boardroom. The investors, all sharp-eyed and business-savvy, sat across from him, their faces impassive as he spoke. Tariq's nerves got the best of him. His voice faltered. He stammered through his points, the slides on the projector flickering as if mocking his incompetence. When the presentation ended, the room was silent, the investors exchanging cold glances. The silence was deafening. "You've failed us, Tariq," one of the investors said bluntly. "This is unacceptable. We expected a polished, professional proposal, not this." Tariq felt the heat rise in his chest. He had failed. Again. His mind raced, but there was nothing to say in his defense. His pulse quickened, and his stomach churned. The weight of the moment pressed down on him, and for the first time since joining Bellotech, Tariq felt like he had completely let down everyone, especially Amara. After the meeting, he retreated to his office, his mind clouded with self-doubt. He had failed, and he knew the consequences would be severe. He had made the biggest mistake of his career, and the failure stung worse than anything he had experienced in the past. He replayed the meeting in his head over and over. His lack of preparation, his inability to think on his feet. The doubts that had been brewing for months now felt like a torrent crashing through his mind. Amara found him in his office later that day. Her face was unreadable, but Tariq could see the disappointment in her eyes. The silence between them felt heavy. She walked toward him, her steps measured. "I trusted you with this," Amara said softly, "and you've let us all down." Tariq swallowed hard, the sting of her words cutting deep. He opened his mouth to apologize, to explain, but nothing came out. His mind was blank. "I don't know if I can keep going like this," Tariq finally muttered, his voice breaking. "I've failed. I'm not cut out for this." Amara's expression softened, but her voice was firm. "Failure is a part of growth, Tariq. It's the only way we learn. But you can't let it define you. You need to decide what kind of man you want to be. Do you give up, or do you rise from this?" Her words hit him harder than anything she had ever said. Tariq stared at her, the weight of his decision looming over him. Would he crumble under the pressure, or would he fight for the chance she had given him? Tariq spent the next few days in a fog of self-doubt. The weight of his failure, coupled with the expectations that he had let down, felt unbearable. Every corner of Bellotech reminded him of the immense pressure to succeed, and every look from his colleagues made him feel like an imposter in a world of giants. He was no longer just a delivery boy. Now he was a man who had been given everything, only to lose it all in one disastrous moment. The once bold ambitions that had pushed him to keep climbing now seemed like distant dreams. All he could think about was the crushing disappointment in Amara's eyes, the silent judgment of the investors, and the way Kemi had all but declared his failure as the beginning of his downfall. But as the days dragged on, something within him began to shift. The frustration, the sting of failure, it began to fuel a fire he had never allowed to burn. Tariq wasn't the type to give up. He had fought for everything in his life, from the struggles in the slums of Lagos to the grueling hours spent as a delivery boy. He knew what it meant to fight for survival. And this was no different. Late one night, as he sat alone in his office, staring at the remnants of the failed proposal, Tariq realized something profound. Failure didn't define him. How he responded to failure would. The way he picked himself up, dusted himself off, and kept moving forward, no matter how many setbacks came his way, that was what would define him. He stood up, his fists clenched in determination. There was still time. He wasn't going to let one mistake determine his future. He wasn't going to let this world of opportunity slip through his fingers because of fear. The pain in his chest didn't go away, but it became something else, motivation. It became his strength. The next morning, Tariq went straight to Amara's office, his heart pounding in his chest. She was sitting at her desk as composed as ever, but when she saw him standing in the doorway, her eyes softened. "Tariq," she said, her tone guarded, "I was hoping you'd come." He stepped forward, his voice steady despite the rush of emotions inside him. "I failed, but I won't let that be the end. I need another chance, Amara. I'll make this right. I'll prove to you, to the team, that I can do this." Amara watched him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. But then she stood up and walked around the desk. She placed a hand on his shoulder, gentle but firm. "This is what I've been waiting for, Tariq. This is why I believed in you. Everyone fails. It's how you get back up that matters. And right now, I see a man who's ready to fight." A wave of relief washed over Tariq, but it was quickly replaced by a renewed sense of urgency. He wasn't just fighting for a job, he was fighting for his future, for his place in this world that had once seemed so out of reach. Amara's faith in him reignited something inside of him. He wasn't the same person who had walked into Bellotech months ago. He was a man on a mission. The next few days were a blur of late nights, endless revisions, and countless hours spent perfecting the new proposal for Redstone Capital. Tariq put everything he had into it, channeling the lessons he had learned from his past failures and victories. He knew that this wasn't just another presentation. It was his redemption. When the day of the meeting arrived, Tariq stood in front of the investors with a calm resolve. This time, there was no fear. There was only focus. As he delivered the proposal, he could feel his confidence growing with every word. By the end of the presentation, it was clear he had delivered something remarkable. Amara watched from the back of the room, a proud smile on her face. Tariq had done it. He had not only redeemed himself, but he had also proven to himself that he belonged in this world, among the people who had once looked down on him. The days following the successful presentation felt like a blur, but the weight on Tariq's shoulders had finally begun to lift. Redstone Capital had been impressed, and Bellotech secured the investment that would push the company toward greater heights. For the first time since joining the company, Tariq felt a sense of peace that came from knowing he had truly earned his place. Amara had been the first to congratulate him, her voice filled with quiet pride. "You did it, Tariq. I knew you had it in you." Her words resonated deeply within him. Tariq had always doubted himself, always wondered if he truly belonged in a world of luxury, power, and billion-dollar deals. But now he understood. He wasn't just there because of Amara's generosity. He had worked for it. Every late night, every mistake, every moment of self-doubt had led him to this point. He had earned his success, and that realization filled him with a sense of pride he had never known before. Yet, even with the triumph came a reminder of the long road ahead. Kemi, who had once undermined him at every turn, had begun to notice the shift in the company's atmosphere. She could no longer belittle Tariq's contributions, especially now that he had proven himself. One afternoon, as Tariq passed her desk, she looked up from her computer with a mix of resignation and reluctant respect. "Looks like you've earned your spot after all," Kemi said, her tone neutral, though there was no mistaking the undercurrent of begrudging acknowledgment. Tariq met her gaze without flinching. "Thank you," he replied simply, his voice steady. He had no desire to hold grudges, no need to engage in petty rivalry. He had bigger things to focus on now, his future. Over the next few months, Tariq continued to rise within Bellotech. With each new project, he proved to himself and to the company that he had the ability to lead, to innovate, and to push the boundaries of what was possible. He worked side by side with the brightest minds in the tech world, and although the pressure never fully went away, Tariq had grown stronger. He knew how to handle setbacks, how to rise from failure, and how to trust in his own abilities. Amara, seeing Tariq's transformation, had begun to rely on him more and more, even entrusting him with the company's most important strategic decisions. Their relationship had evolved from that of an employer and employee to a partnership, one built on mutual respect and trust. She often told him, "You're no longer the delivery boy I met that day. You're the future of this company." One evening, as Tariq sat in his office looking out over the sprawling city of Lagos, he allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. The city below was alive with energy, with possibility. He had come a long way from the streets, from the small, cramped apartment he once called home. But more than that, he had come a long way from the boy who doubted himself, who was afraid to take risks and face challenges head-on. Tariq had transformed, not just in the eyes of the world, but in his own eyes. He had learned that success wasn't handed to you on a silver platter. It was earned, fought for, and built piece by piece. He had learned that failure wasn't the end of the road, but merely a detour on the path to greatness. And most importantly, he had learned that no matter where you came from, no matter how small or insignificant you might feel, you could change your destiny. As the sun set over the horizon, casting a golden glow over the city, Tariq smiled to himself. He had done it. He had not only transformed his life, but he had proven that anything was possible with determination, hard work, and the courage to keep going, even when the road seemed impossible. And in that moment, he knew his journey was only just beginning.